You didn't see it happen. There was no obvious sign, no dramatic shift, no external cue. And yet, something cracked. Not out there, but in here. Inside you. Quiet, almost invisible, but unmistakably real. The silence has changed. It feels heavier now, like it's carrying a message you haven't fully heard, but can already feel pressing against your chest. This is how it begins. Not with an event, but with sensation. A shift in frequency. A subtle unraveling. You start to notice you're a little less stable in places you thought were solid. Your thoughts feel slower. Your body heavier. Your emotions, harder to explain. And still, there's no reason. That's the point. The energy doesn't explain itself. It moves through you before your mind can catch up. Today marks the beginning of something internal. The portal isn't opening outside you anymore, it's already in motion, inside your nervous system, inside your breath, inside every old belief that's starting to wobble under the weight of something more true. This isn't chaos. This is realignment. This is where the old version of you starts to lose its grip, not in fear, but because it's finally time. If you've been feeling off, disconnected, foggy, emotional for no reason at all, you're not broken. You're right on time. You've entered the wave. If this energy is speaking to something in you, take a moment to subscribe. These updates will keep flowing through the portal, and if you're here now, you're already moving with it. And if any part of this transmission resonates, feel free to leave a word, a feeling, or a symbol in the comments. It might echo more than you know. Let's begin. It doesn't arrive with noise. It doesn't kick the door in. It slides in quietly, subtle, unassuming, almost invisible. A flicker in your awareness. A strange pull towards something familiar. You catch yourself thinking about someone you haven't seen in years. You feel the sudden urge to scroll through old photos, reread old conversations, revisit a time you thought you'd long since left behind. It starts innocently. Harmless nostalgia, maybe. A moment of memory. But under the surface, something deeper is unfolding. You're not going backward. You're brushing up against the soft, sticky edges of your old identity, the version of you that learned to survive within systems that no longer fit. And as the energy of this portal begins to expand through your field, the resistance starts rising. Not as a wall. Not as a scream. But as a whisper. A hesitation. A quiet internal protest from the parts of you that aren't sure if it's safe to let go. This is subtle resistance, and it's almost always misunderstood. Because it doesn't look like fear. It looks like longing. It looks like a pull toward what once felt like home. You may find yourself missing someone you know you've outgrown. You may crave a habit, a pattern, or a place that used to feel comforting, even if it hurt. Your nervous system is scanning the landscape of your past for anything familiar to hold on to. It's a response to change, to expansion, to uncertainty. And it's completely human. But this is where many people get caught. They mistake this resistance for failure. They think the fact that the old is resurfacing means they're doing something wrong. That they've slipped, or spiraled, or lost momentum. When in truth, this phase is a sign of progress. You only encounter this kind of resistance when you're standing at the edge of release. You only hear these echoes when you're about to step fully into something new. Your soul has already moved forward. But the mind, the part of you built on memory, on repetition, on logic, is still catching up. The mind doesn't evolve as quickly as the spirit. It needs proof. It wants structure. It wants to know what's next. And when it doesn't have that, it reaches back. Not because it wants to go back. But because it's afraid of floating in the space between. This space, the in-between, is where subtle resistance thrives. It's the place where your old life no longer fits, but the new one hasn't fully landed. It's where you question everything. It's where your certainty dissolves and your defenses flare. It's where you feel most tempted to run, either back to what hurt or into numbness, distraction, denial. But what if, instead of running, you paused here? What if you stayed long enough to see what's actually happening beneath the discomfort? You're not broken. You're not backtracking. You're in contact with a part of yourself that has waited a long time to be acknowledged. The part that still clings to an old belief, that if you let go of what's familiar, you'll be left with nothing. That safety only exists in what's already known. That growth is too risky, too uncertain, too exposed. This is not something to fix. It's something to feel. Subtle resistance asks to be witnessed. Not argued with. Not overpowered. Just seen. It wants your presence, not your plan. It rises because a layer of identity is loosening. And that loosening brings up grief, fear, confusion, even for the strongest, most self-aware souls. You may find yourself exhausted by your own thoughts, unable to focus, unsure of your next step. You may feel like everything is moving too fast or not moving at all. Let that be okay. Let yourself be in this middle space, where the old is fading, but the new hasn't arrived. Let yourself miss things that weren't good for you. Let yourself want to reach out to people you've already let go. Let yourself sit in the ache without rushing to numb it. This isn't weakness. This is clearing. And clearing requires feeling. Deeply. Honestly. Without judgment. It's easy to confuse emotional discomfort with spiritual regression. But the truth is, you are being rewired from the inside out. And the closer you get to freedom, the louder your old patterns may become. Not to hold you back, but to give you one last chance to face them fully. To see them not as obstacles, but as invitations. Invitations to stand in your truth. To let your nervous system learn a new rhythm. To allow discomfort without attaching a story to it. You don't need to figure it all out right now. You don't need to decide anything. You only need to stay with yourself, through the longing, the doubt, the slow, strange unraveling of what no longer serves you. The more compassion you offer yourself here, the more space you create for what's trying to emerge. So if you're noticing old feelings surface, or feeling tempted to return to patterns that once helped you cope, pause before you move. Ask yourself, is this coming from love, or from fear? Am I reaching back because it's right, or because it's known? And even if you can't answer clearly, that's okay too. The act of asking is already a shift. The awareness alone means you're no longer moving unconsciously. You're present now. Watching. Choosing. That's the power of this moment. Not in having all the answers, but in being able to see yourself clearly as you stand at the threshold, 1 foot in what was, and 1 foot in what's about to be. The shift doesn't begin in your thoughts. It doesn't start with a clear decision or a conscious realization. It begins lower, deeper, in the places that don't speak in language. It begins in the body. Long before the mind can catch up, the body is already responding. Subtly at first. A tightness in the chest you can't explain. A sudden heaviness in your limbs. The kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. You might feel emotionally foggy or hypersensitive to things that normally wouldn't bother you. Certain noises might feel too sharp. Lights feel too bright. Conversations feel like they're happening too fast. And through it all, you might think, what's wrong with me? But the truth is, nothing's wrong. You're just processing something that hasn't yet reached the surface of your awareness. The emotional field is shifting. And because the body is the most honest part of you, it's the first to respond. It doesn't filter. It doesn't argue. It simply reacts. The nervous system, the breath, the gut, they all begin to mirror the frequency of what's rising inside. And right now, what's rising isn't light. It's weight. Not to crush you, but to be released. You are carrying old emotional data, unprocessed experiences, suppressed grief, inherited trauma, and the portal you're standing in is finally making space for that data to be cleared. But clearing doesn't look peaceful at first. It looks like discomfort. It looks like restlessness. It looks like irritability you can't explain. You might start forgetting simple things. You might feel more clumsy, or like your reflexes are slightly off. Your energy doesn't move the way it used to. You may not feel like yourself, and that's because you're not. Not fully. You're in between. This is the disorientation of release. You are unraveling internal structures that once held you together, thought patterns, emotional coping strategies, muscle memory tied to defense mechanisms you developed when you had no choice but to protect yourself. And now, as those walls begin to fall, your body doesn't quite know what to do with the space that's opening. There may be grief, and you won't always know what it's attached to. There may be tears that come in waves, and you won't be able to tell if they belong to the present or the past. And that's okay. The body doesn't separate time the way the mind does. It remembers everything at once. And when a portal like this opens, a true energetic window for healing, it starts moving that memory through you. You might feel like you're regressing. Like you're breaking down. But this isn't collapse, it's detox. Emotional detox doesn't just happen in the mind or in your intentions. It happens in your muscles. In your heartbeat. In the strange dreams that visit you at 3 a.m. In the way your posture changes without you realizing. In the way your breath gets stuck in your chest when someone says something that hits a forgotten nerve. The body has been holding it all. For years. For lifetimes, in some cases. And now, it's finally being allowed to release. But just like physical detox, the first phase doesn't feel better, it feels worse. That doesn't mean the healing isn't working. It means it's working at the deepest layer. This is why it's so important to give yourself permission to slow down right now. Not because you're failing, but because you're transitioning. The wave that's moving through you isn't mental, it's cellular. And it doesn't care how busy you are, or what's on your to-do list. It only cares about one thing, truth. And if your current pace doesn't make space for truth to rise, your body will start forcing you to pause. Headaches. A sore throat. Random tension in your jaw, your back, your gut. These are not coincidences. They are messages. They are exits, places where the old energy is trying to leave. But if you don't make space for that exit, it lingers. It recycles. It builds pressure. And that's when things feel overwhelming. So let yourself lie down. Let yourself cry. Let yourself cancel plans. Let yourself take the long way home. Let yourself feel like a stranger to yourself, because you are becoming someone new. You are leaving behind the density that once defined your emotional survival. And what's taking its place is softness. Stillness. Spaciousness. But that space can feel frightening at first, like floating with no ground beneath you. That's okay. You're not supposed to have all the answers yet. You're in the middle. The sacred middle. Where the old system dissolves and the new hasn't fully arrived. It's a tender place. A raw place. And if you try to rush through it, you'll miss the medicine of it. So listen to your body. It's not just reacting. It's recalibrating. It's reteaching you how to trust yourself from the inside out. Not through thought, through sensation. Through rhythm. Through breath. Let it speak. Let it shake. Let it rest. You're not falling apart. You're clearing space for something that finally fits. There comes a point in every deep shift where the emotional weight peaks, not because you're falling apart, but because you're finally letting go of something you never truly needed. This is the moment most people mistake for a breakdown. The confusion. The heaviness. The sudden uncertainty about who you are, what you're doing, and why everything feels just a little bit off. But what if it's not a breakdown at all? What if it's just the space between false clarity and real truth? It's common, almost inevitable, to feel like something's wrong right before something real begins to land. And the reason it feels so destabilizing is because what's falling apart isn't your life. It's the story you told yourself about it. The version of reality you built from wounds, from patterns, from the unspoken agreements you made with fear. And as that story starts to break down, the system that upheld it begins to tremble. That trembling is what you're feeling right now. You may start to notice small cracks forming in the roles you've been playing. The way you talk to certain people starts to feel fake. The responsibilities you once carried so naturally start to feel heavy in a way that's hard to ignore. Conversations that used to feel automatic now feel forced. You find yourself questioning decisions that used to feel obvious. Your sense of direction wavers. And none of it makes sense on the surface. But deep down, you know, you're not confused. You're just waking up. This is what happens when false alignment begins to fall away. When you stop doing things just because you always have. When you stop being who others expect you to be. When you stop holding up dynamics that only ever served a version of you that no longer exists. That part of you isn't broken. It's just done. And the portal you're in right now is making sure you can't carry it forward. Not because it's punishing you. But because it's clearing the path for something truer. This is the energy that strips away everything that no longer holds weight in your soul. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait until you feel ready. It just moves. It exposes what's shaky. It reveals what you've outgrown. It dissolves the identities, titles, connections, and expectations that are no longer rooted in authenticity. And it does so with precision. Not violently, but unavoidably. You might be noticing a deep discomfort in spaces that once felt like home. A certain friend group starts to feel distant. A project that once inspired you now leaves you drained. You question whether your goals are even your own. And beneath all of it is a quiet but growing knowing that you can't go back. You can't pretend anymore. You can't unsee what you're seeing now. This is not a failure. This is a clearing. The portal you're moving through is asking you, softly but persistently, to stop performing and start seeing. To stop holding it all together for the sake of appearances. To stop prioritizing being okay over being honest. To let yourself admit what isn't working, even if you don't yet know what comes next. And that's the most disorienting part, not the collapse, but the unknown that follows. The space between the old narrative and the new one. The blank page. The waiting. The silence. It's tempting to fill that space. To rush into something, anything, that gives you a sense of identity again. But this moment, this strange and uncomfortable in-between, is sacred. Because this is where your real voice gets louder. The one you've been quieting to keep the peace. The one you've buried under roles and responsibilities and relational expectations. The one that doesn't speak in logic, but in knowing. It doesn't scream. It just stands there, unwavering. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. That's why everything else starts to sound hollow. That's why what once motivated you now feels mechanical. That's why certain relationships feel like you're going through the motions. It's not that anything outside of you has changed, it's that something inside of you finally has. You're no longer aligned with the version of you who built the old world. You're here now. Present. Conscious. And that presence is dissolving everything that isn't real. You may not feel clear yet. You may still feel lost, unsure, emotionally raw. But that, too, is part of the process. The mind doesn't like being in limbo. It will tell you something's gone wrong. That you've lost momentum. That you've fallen apart. But the soul knows better. The soul knows that nothing real ever crumbles. Only illusions do. So if you feel like you're unraveling right now, try not to rush through it. Don't try to reassemble something that's meant to stay broken. Don't chase comfort when what you need is truth. Sit in the rawness. Let yourself feel the stretch of the unknown. Let the old beliefs, the outdated identities, the surface-level peace fall away. What you're feeling now is the moment before breakthrough. Not a light switch, not a grand event, but a gradual shedding of everything that stood between you and who you actually are. It might not be pretty. It might not make sense yet. But it's necessary. And somewhere beneath all this discomfort is the exact clarity you've been waiting for. The most important thing you can do right now isn't to figure it all out, it's to stay open. To stay honest. To stay present with what's breaking, without trying to fix it too quickly. This is where real change begins. Not in the leap, but in the moment you stop lying to yourself about what's still true. Not everything that's falling apart needs to be rescued. Not every crack needs to be filled. Some things are collapsing because it's time, not because you've failed, or missed a step, or chosen wrong. But because a cycle is completing itself. Quietly. Precisely. Without your permission, and without needing it. Today isn't about changing everything. It's not about having a breakthrough or reaching a high. It's about becoming aware. Softly, steadily, honestly. It's about looking around and noticing what's no longer holding its shape. What's beginning to fall out of resonance. What you've been carrying that no longer responds to your frequency. It's subtle. But it's real. There are things in your life right now that were built by older versions of you, patterns, relationships, goals, even personality traits, that once helped you feel safe. That once helped you make sense of the world. But those versions of you were shaped by the environment you were in at the time. And as your inner world shifts, the outer forms built around those old energies begin to crack. Not because you did something wrong, but because the structure doesn't match the blueprint anymore. And so it begins to fall. Gently, awkwardly, without drama, unless you resist it. That's the thing, collapse isn't painful by nature. It becomes painful when we cling. When we try to hold up what's already trying to let go. When we keep fixing what was never meant to last. And most of us do this out of habit. Out of fear. Out of a sense of duty to the past version of ourselves who worked so hard to build something, anything, just to survive. But what if your job right now isn't to fix? What if it's to notice? To stand inside the unraveling with your eyes open, not rushing, not denying, not blaming, but simply witnessing what's no longer stable. What's no longer true. What no longer reflects your actual values, your actual capacity, your actual truth. Awareness alone begins the release. It really does. You don't have to burn it down. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to push it out the door. When you see something clearly enough, when your body, your heart, your field registers that this is no longer aligned, a natural, organic detachment begins. Not violent. Not sudden. Just real. Just honest. And realness creates its own momentum. This is a different kind of power than we're taught to respect. We're conditioned to believe that power means action, fast, decisive, bold. But the power you're stepping into now is quieter. It's the kind that holds still long enough to watch a mask fall without needing to name it. The kind that doesn't react, but listens. That doesn't rush to replace what's ending, but makes space for what's being born. And that kind of power requires something most people avoid, discomfort without distraction. It's not easy to stay present with what's dissolving. It's tempting to sweep it under the rug, to distract yourself with busyness or numbing. But if you can sit in a space where things no longer make sense, without needing to fix it, without needing it to feel better right away, you'll begin to feel something else emerge. Something more stable than effort. More trustworthy than control. Something real. This is the space of conscious collapse. The sacred undoing. Not the kind that leaves you broken, but the kind that breaks what was never truly you to begin with. A role. A performance. A relationship held together by obligation instead of truth. A story about who you were supposed to be, written by people who never saw who you actually are. And as that story begins to crumble, so will everything built upon it. So let it. Let what's shaky reveal itself. Let what's been performing fall silent. Let what you've outgrown lose its color. And let yourself stop pretending that you don't notice. Because you do notice. You feel it. That subtle disconnect in certain conversations. That tightening in your chest around certain tasks. That sense of resistance you brush off but can't quite shake. These are not glitches. They're signals. Invitations to pay attention. To see clearly without judging what you find. There is no need to label things as bad or good, right or wrong. That's not the point. The point is honesty. The point is to stop gaslighting your own inner knowing. The moment you acknowledge that something feels false, even slightly, you give yourself permission to move differently. To be honest in quiet, powerful ways. And here's the beauty of it, not everything needs to be spoken aloud. Not every realization needs to become a confrontation. Sometimes, it's enough to simply know. To shift your energy. To step back. To stop feeding what no longer feeds you. To stop chasing what was never actually yours to carry. That knowing creates space. And that space is what the new needs in order to arrive. You are not here to rescue every version of yourself. You are not here to hold together every crumbling structure. Some things are ending because you're growing. Some things are breaking because they were never built on truth. And some things are simply falling away because you're ready, even if you don't feel ready. So let this be the day you stop fixing what's trying to leave. Let it unravel. Let it become obvious. Let it fall apart without needing to hold it together one more time. Not because you gave up, but because you finally saw it for what it really is. From here on, things may appear the same. Your routines, your relationships, your surroundings, they might still wear the same shape. But inside, the architecture is shifting. What once felt firm is beginning to loosen. What once made sense may now feel hollow. And that isn't a sign you've lost your way. It's the quiet signal that alignment is waking up. You're not unraveling because you're broken. You're unraveling because the old version of you has nothing left to hold on to. The structures that once defined you, roles, patterns, defenses, they're slipping not because you're falling, but because you're being lifted into something more honest. So give yourself permission to drift a little. To feel unfamiliar in your own skin. To stop gripping what's already halfway gone. Let the old stories collapse on their own timeline. You don't need to rescue them. And if this transmission touched something in you, if it helped name what you're feeling but couldn't explain, take a quiet moment to subscribe. We're moving through this portal one day at a time. And I'd love to know, what are you sensing, resisting, or releasing right now? Drop a word or a feeling in the comments. You might be surprised how many people feel exactly the same. You don't have to know what's coming next. You just have to stay with what's leaving. Gently. Truthfully. One breath at a time.